And you can begin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's uh, webinar or presentation. My name is George Moda, and I will be taking you guys through Compliance 101. Before I get into that, I'm going to give you a department overview. DPS is the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for the city of Chicago. We work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. All right, so let's just get into points of interest. What we do, we review bidders' proposer compliance plans, monitor the MWDB commitments, monitor equal employment opportunity, which are the minority and female commitments, monitor CRO, which stands for Chicago Residency Ordinance, the local residency requirement, and we close out the contracts here. How we do it, we use the Certification and Compliance System, also known as C2, and we used our certified payroll processing system, which is LCP Tracker. We conduct audits and we conduct site visits. Obviously, this is just a brief overview. I'll get into more detail as the slides go on. All right, the first slide that we see here is schedules. So whenever you bid on a City of Chicago contract, you'll see some paperwork, and they're all labeled at the top. Some of them are labeled Schedule B, Schedule C, Schedule D, and a Schedule H. So the Schedule B is basically when two companies decide to come together and form a joint venture. Typically, a joint venture, um, Schedule B is a documentation to show that there's a joint venture coming together. It's usually a non-minority or woman-owned business joining forces with a certified company, whether they're certified as a minority, a woman, or a disadvantaged business. So it's when two companies, one uncertified and one certified, come together to bid on a project together. So if you're planning on bidding on a project and teaming up with somebody, the Schedule B is something that you would need to fill out when submitting your bid. A Schedule C, uh, a little later, I'm going to go over Schedule C a little more in detail. It's just basically letter of intent, almost kind of like a receipt, right? Schedule D is the compliance plan for minority women and disadvantaged VBE participation, and we're going to have to update the slides to talk to include VBE participation as well. Without a Schedule D, uh, we won't look at your bid. So in order to bid on a City of Chicago project, you need to have a Schedule D. And lastly, the Schedule H is documentations of good faith efforts. And I'll get into that a little later. Schedule H is just basically letting us know why you can achieve the goals that are associated with the contract. Compliance reviews. So this is pre-award. Um, so as I mentioned earlier, in order for you to bid on a project, you need to submit what's known as a Schedule D. The Schedule D is a sheet that the prime contractor who is bidding fills out, and this is where they list all the certified companies that they plan on using for the project. If for any odd reason, let's just an example, let's just say the goals on a contract you plan to bid on are 26 and 6, and you feel that maybe you can't meet the 26 and 6, so you decide to bid on the contract um, with goals of like 20 and 6, right? You can't meet the minority goals. We would ask you for documentation of good faith efforts. Basically, we're asking you, why do you feel like you can't meet that 26% that we're requiring you to bid on for the contract, right? So you would need to explain to us why you can't hit that 26% and why you feel like you can only hit 26%. And there could be several different reasons as to why you can't, right? Maybe you couldn't find a specific type of company to do a specific type of work. Um, so that's what we mean by the documentation of good faith efforts. Uh, and that goes along with the full or partial waiver of contract goals. So when you're bidding on a contract, you're allowed to ask for a complete waiver of a goal or a partial waiver of a goal. If we uh, for a specific contract, as mentioned earlier, the goals are 26 and 6. You're allowed to ask for a reduction in the goal or a complete waiver of the goal if you feel like those goals are unattainable. Um, but you really have to be very uh, yeah, your documentation of good faith effort has to be really good in order for us to even consider a partial or full waiver of the goal. Okay, so here again we see the Schedule C. I'm gonna go a little more detail on exactly what it is, right? So the Schedule C is kind of an agreement between the certified firm. So the Schedule C is typically filled out by a subcontractor that's going to work on the contract, and they basically list all the things that they're going to do on the contract, right? Um, so when you're submitting a bid, typically the prime has to submit what's called the Schedule D, and along with the Schedule D is they submit the Schedule Cs, right? And that's kind of like an agreement between the sub and the prime. On the Schedule C, I'm going to show you a little in another slide coming up what exactly the Schedule C looks like and what it is exactly we need you to fill out. But it's basically just an agreement with the prime and the sub. Certification letter is um, is a letter that the certification unit provides the subcontractor with work they are eligible to receive credit on. So I'm going to give you an example. If I'm a trucking firm and I got certified to do hauling and dumping, and they put me on a contract to pave the cement, obviously I'm not going to get awarded the credit for paving cement because I wasn't certified in that area of specialty. Um, so, you know, let's just give you a little explanation of what that is. I don't want to read off the slide, so I'm just going freelancing this, right? And then what we require along with your bid is quotes or proposals, how you guys came about the price that you guys agreed to on the Schedule C. Common mistakes we see on the when you guys are filling out this paperwork is, incomplete brief descriptions of work. You guys leave the mentor protege question unanswered. Uh, you guys either leave the subcontracting levels blank. You may forget to fill out the supplier participation percentage. Here's the Schedule C I had mentioned to you earlier. Um, Obviously, when you're filling this out, we require all these items to be filled in. The project name, the spec number, from here's where you would list a sub, to is where you put the prime contractor. So this is what we mean when we say it's an agreement between the subcontractor and the prime. Uh, in this middle section right here, you're going to list the type of work that you're going to be doing on the project, right? That's where the certification comes into play. Your certification has to fit into what you're listing on the Schedule C, right? And the pay item number description, we typically like you guys to fill out the from the schedule of prices. There's always numbers associated with each line item on the schedule of prices. So if line item 1 is to excavate and your firm is excavating, we would like you to put line item 1 excavation, how much you plan on doing it for in the total, right? Depending on how many hours or how much you're going to do it for, that's how you get your unit quantity, your unit price, and then the total amount. You put the subtotal there, and then obviously if it's at 100%, you would just match the subtotal. But if you're a supplier, suppliers only get 60% credit, so you would have to list it there. Sorry about the beep. And then the bottom portion of page 1 of the Schedule C, it's basically if someone else filled this sheet out that wasn't the president or CEO of this of the subcontractor, then we would like to know who filled out this sheet, right? And if it was a president or CEO, you would leave this little top portion blank, and then you would put down at the bottom, you would just put the signature of the president or the CEO if they filled it out themselves. But if they had someone else fill it out, we'd like this top portion filled in. And this is the second page of the Schedule C. This is partial pay items. So let's just say line item 1 requires you to do excavation work, and you want to use 2 certified subcontractors to do that type of work, or even if you utilize 1 sub that's certified and one isn't, we would like to know if they're doing partial of the work, then you need to list that item here. So let's just give you an example. If it was $100 to excavate line item 1, and your subcontractor is doing $50 worth, someone else is doing the other $50 worth, we'd like you to list that line item here, because obviously it's a partial pay item and you're not doing a full item. Now, if you were doing the full item, you would put that in the first page of the Schedule C, and you would leave this portion blank right here. The subcontracting levels, many people usually leave this blank, but we would like you to put 0 and 0, right? If you're not utilizing anybody to do any portion of the work, we would like you to fill that in as 0 and 0. Now, if you are utilizing somebody to do a portion of the work that's given to you, we would like to know if they're a non-certified firm and how much percent of the work they're doing, or if they are a certified firm, how much of the percent of the work they're doing. We hardly ever see this, but every once in a while, some subcontractors do like to sub out some of their work to another certified firm or not certified firm. This is the mentor protege portion we were speaking of. If you guys are planning on ever using a mentor protege, you would check yes. We hardly ever see mentor protege. It's just an agreement where well, I guess I could give you a little background on what mentor protege is. It's when the prime contractor plans on taking a subcontractor kind of under his wing and teaching him or her business something that they really don't know much about, right? They're being mentored on taking a new work that they're not certified to do. Again, obviously, if this portion isn't filled out by the president or CEO, we would like to know who filled it out on the top, and then obviously the bottom portion again would need to be filled out by the president or CEO of the firm. Commercially useful function. In order to get credit for the work you're doing, you need to be doing a commercially useful function, and a commercially useful function is being able to perform, manage, and supervise your own work, right? You need to be able to have your own machinery, you need to be able to have your own employees and your own supervisors out there on the job, or else you're not performing a commercially useful function and you can't get credit for the work that you're doing. County participation, area of specialty. So as I mentioned earlier, obviously each certified firm has work that they could do, and that's known as their area of specialty. We associate this with the NAICS codes. So if you're certified to do a specific type of work, you'll have a NAICS code associated with your firm. Self-performers get 100% of the work. Manufacturers get 100% of the work. Again, if you're a supplier supplying some type of material, then you would only get 60% credit. And we're not saying that you're not going to get paid in full if you're a supplier. If someone buys $100 worth of supplies from you, you will still get that $100. But when it comes to counting credit for the MWD or VDE, we only count 60% of that. So you would only get $60 worth of credit towards that goal. Post-award requirements and contractor and contract monitoring. So once the contract begins, the prime contractor will get the notice to proceed on the contract. Once they get their notice to proceed, the contract begins, and these are the things we monitor, right? Depending upon the type of goals that the contract has, whether it's minority, women, disadvantaged business enterprises, or as I mentioned earlier, now we have the VBE program. We monitor the participation on each contract, right? Now, obviously, some aspects of the job are a little hard to keep track of, and sometimes contracts don't always seem as they are, right? Typically, when a construction contract is ongoing, the landscaping portion of the contract usually takes place at the end of the contract. So there is instances where we see a certified firm not being utilized at the beginning of the contract, and we reach out to the prime contractor, and they'll give us some explanation as to why they're falling behind on their MW or DBE goals. The Eco Employment Opportunities, the EEO goal. This is a goal that the prime contractor sets for himself. This goal is associated with, minority journey workers, minority apprentices, minority laborers, women apprentices, women journey workers, and women laborers. So these goals that the prime contractor sets for himself, depending on how much they feel the workforce, the labor workforce they could achieve. The local residency requirement goal typically is 7.5 for contracts, but I've seen it change. That's wherever the project is taking place in Chicago, we need to hire local residents that live in that area where the project is taking place. So let's just say the project is taking place in O'Hare Airport. You would need to hire people that live near O'Hare Airport to achieve the local residency goal. Lastly is the Chicago residency goal. This has a 50% achievement. Every contract has a CRO goal of 50%. So half of the labor workforce that you have on field has to live in Chicago. Keep that in mind. So this doesn't necessarily matter where the project is taking place. Just half of your workforce has to be from the city of Chicago. C2 payment reporting, track payments to the prime, to the MWBE firm. So the C2 system, which is the compliance and certification system, is where the prime contractor reports payments to his certified subcontractors on a monthly basis. So when the city of Chicago pays the prime contractor for the work it's done for the month, this is where the prime would then receive that payment and in turn pay his certified subcontractors. So the C2 system is where we keep track of all the payments that are being made from the city of Chicago to the prime and the prime to the subcontractors. The C2 system requires subcontractors to verify their payments. So anytime that there's a payment made to the subs, they'll get a notification to their email notifying them the prime has reported payment to them. And we use the certification and compliance system to identify how the project is ongoing with its goals. Certified payroll reporting. This is how we keep track of all the labor workforce goals that are associated with the contract. This is the certified payroll processing system that we use is LCP Tracker. That's where we keep track of the Chicago Residency Ordinance, the Equal Employment Opportunity goals, and we also keep track of the local residency requirement. LCP Tracker is a completely automated web-based system specifically designed for prime contractors and their subcontractors. The certified processing payroll system allows for the management of labor compliance, Davis-Bacon, and prevailing wage processes. It also validates local, state, and federal Davis-Bacon wage prevailing regulations. Payroll data may be entered directly into the system or uploaded for major construction, accounting, and payroll programs. This eliminates the need for paper documents to be submitted. All contract-specific wage rates and worker classifications are online within the system. The contractor selects classifications from the menu. Potential errors in the wage rates or worker classification entries are flagged to contractors, allowing contractors to correct the data prior to submitting. Field analyst. So we have one field analyst at the moment. Hopefully we get a few more in the, oh, we have two field analysts at the moment. Sorry about that. We're supposed to be getting a few more, hopefully, in the near future. What field analysts do from a compliance standpoint is they're an extension of the compliance officer's role with the focus of on conducting site visits to physically observe and collect data on MWDDE firms to ensure commercially useful function is being performed. So currently for the compliance unit, we have Jeffrey Harris as our field analyst. What he does is he goes out to these different job sites and he conducts interviews with the workers on the job site. He basically asks them how much they're being paid on the job. He asks to check their IDs to see where they live, and he writes all this information down. And then when he's done conducting his field visit, he comes back to the office and he gives that paperwork to the compliance officer who belongs to that contract. And in a few weeks from when he submits that paperwork, the compliance officer will log into LCP Tracker to check and make sure that the data that Jeff Harris received on the field is accurate, right? Let's just say John Doe was working on a day that field analyst went out to visit. He asked John Doe how much he gets paid per hour, and he checks John Doe's ID, and John Doe's ID said that he lived in Indiana. And then I log into the LCP Tracker system, and I go to check John Doe's information, and I see that the prime contractor or subcontractor is reporting this individual as living in the city of Chicago or in Illinois. Then that becomes an issue, right? Because his ID said he lived in Indiana, and they're reporting him that he's living in Chicago. So therefore, they're kind of like falsifying documents. So that's what the field analysts do from a compliance standpoint. They go out there and they're kind of our eyes on the actual projects that are ongoing. A field analyst from a certification standpoint, they interview business owners seeking certification with the city of Chicago. They evaluate the firm, their viability, facilities, and industry knowledge for certification. So they basically conduct interviews to make sure that the work that you say you can do, you actually have the equipment to do it and the staff to do it and the knowledge of the job, right? You can't just say, hey, I'm looking to get certified in baking, and then we go visit your job site and there's not an oven in sight, right? That would be an issue, right? Because you're a baking company and you don't have any ovens, then obviously you can't get certified, right? Uh, here, this slide goes in a little bit more into detail what the sites are, the site visits are, right? They tally of workers on site, gender, race, and trade, identify the geographical area where the work is being performed, and they identify contractors. They conduct employee interviews, verify information provided on the inspection report, confirm name, address, trade, wages, employer, commercial use or function. They review certified firms' work, equipment used, manage and supervise employees, working with designated scope of work. They make sure that the job board is always on site, right? This job board usually has state and federal equal opportunity laws, employee rights, the Davis-Bacon, OSHA posters. So they basically make sure all this stuff is visible. The contract closeout overview. So in order for the compliance unit to conduct a closeout, we receive what's called the final quantities. So the final quantities is the list of all the line items that were performed on the job and the total that was paid for each individual line item. The final quantities will have the total cost of the project, right? So that's how we, for construction projects, we utilize the final quantities. We wait for the user department, whether it be the water department or whether it be the Department of Transportation. They would send over the final quantities to the compliance unit, notifying us that this project's ready to close. When we receive the final quantities, we reach out to the prime contractor and request that they submit all the waivers to us, whether they're partial or full waivers. We ask that they send them all over so we can conduct a closeout. Once we receive all the waivers, we compare it to the Schedule D, right? Where all the contractors that were listed on the Schedule D utilized. And if they weren't, then we request justification as to why the subcontractors weren't utilized, right? And sometimes they have a legitimate excuse, right? Maybe the business went out of business, or maybe the subcontractor wasn't available to perform the work when it was their time to perform the work because they were on another job. Um, so once we get that justification, we will review the payroll summaries, and this is where we conduct our audit for the EEO, CRO, and local residency. Once we can put together all the waivers and we get all the payroll summaries together, we issue what's called preliminary letters, right? Um, you would receive a preliminary letter typically if you had a shortfall. If you fell short of meeting the required goals, whether that be for MWD or VBE or EEO, CRO, or the local residency, right? So if you didn't meet any of those goals, you would receive a preliminary letter notifying you of the shortfall and of the potential damages that you might have to pay back to the city of Chicago or to your subcontractor if they choose to arbitrate if you don't reach any of these goals. If for any odd reason you don't reach the goals that you're supposed to, um, you have the opportunity to submit what's called good faith efforts, right? And on these good faith efforts, you would basically explain to us why you fell short on those goals, right? Maybe you were supposed to do a certain amount of line items, but the user department decided, hey, you know what? We don't need to do these 5 line items. We're going to remove them from the contract. So those five line items that you were supposed to do, maybe the subcontractor that was supposed to do them, can no longer do them because the user department decided to remove those line items. That would be something that's good faith efforts, right? There was work that was supposed to be done by a certified firm, but the user department ultimately decided to remove those line items, so that work was no longer available for that certified firm, right? So once your good faith efforts are reviewed, we would either accept them, and if we accept them, we would issue a final letter basically notifying you that your good faith efforts were good, and then we would submit what's called an IOC. Uh, IOC's inter-office communication letter. Basically, we send that to the user department, letting them know that this project is closed. Um, this concludes the presentation. If you find this workshop helpful, share it on social media using DPS workshops and spread the word to help the city business community learn about the programs and initiatives available at the City of Chicago. Follow us on social media. Any questions?